Part 1. The Cry for Help. The galaxy was burning, and everyone knew it. The Ketheri Dominion was not like other empires. It was not driven by hunger, not even by greed. It was a machine of war, a force of steel and fire that moved from one system to the next, swallowing worlds whole. The Ketheri gave no warnings, made no offers of peace. They simply arrived, unleashed their armies, and left silence behind. For the coalition of worlds, a peaceful alliance built on trade and diplomacy, the invasion was a nightmare they were never prepared for. Their fleets were designed for patrol, their soldiers trained to protect cities, not to destroy enemies without mercy. They fought bravely, but bravery is not enough when your enemy knows no fear. One by one, their defenses collapsed. Planets fell, populations vanished. Hope thinned like smoke in the wind. In desperation, the Coalition Council gathered in their great chamber. Leaders from every race sat there, feathered Avrians, scaled Geranth, luminous Kalari, and dozens more. Their voices trembled as they argued, desperate for any solution. Finally, the speaker of the coalition stood, her silver wings folded tight. "We cannot win this war alone," she said. Her voice cracked, not with weakness but with grief. "We must send a call beyond our borders. If any species can help us, we must beg them to answer." And so the message was crafted. It was carried on every frequency, spread into the void like a scream into darkness. To any who hear us, we ask for soldiers. We ask for warriors. We ask for hope. The galaxy waited. Days turned to weeks. No one answered. Until one day the silence broke. A transmission arrived, short and sharp, spoken in a language most of the coalition translators had never heard before. Yet the meaning was clear. The words carried weight like a hammer striking an anvil. "We heard your cry. Earth is coming." Many in the council frowned. Earth, the name was familiar barely. Humanity was a young species, barely explored beyond its home system. They were not part of the coalition nor any major power. To most, they were little more than a curiosity. "They cannot help us," muttered a Geranth general. "Their fleets are small. Their worlds are few. They are children compared to us." Others agreed. Perhaps Earth would send a token force, a few ships, a few battalions to swell the coalition's ranks. But no one believed they could truly change the course of the war. And yet the days that followed told a different story. Scouts on the rim of coalition space reported movement. Massive warships, black and gray, traveling in tight formation. Their engines burned brighter than suns, and their hulls bristled with weapons unlike any the coalition had ever seen. These were not patrol ships. These were predators. When the Terran fleets arrived, the galaxy trembled. Coalition officers gathered on the fortress world of Vera to witness their new allies. They watched as ship after ship descended through the clouds, blocking out the light of the stars. Soldiers disembarked in silence, their boots striking the ground in perfect rhythm. Their armor was dark, scarred by battles already fought. Their faces were cold, their eyes sharp and unyielding. These were not eager recruits or ceremonial guards. These were men and women forged in fire, carved by struggle, and hardened into something else entirely. The coalition expected soldiers, but what stepped onto their soil were executioners. Part 3. The First Battle. The Ketheri struck. Vera with a fury that shook the very foundations of the planet. Machines as tall as mountains rumbled across the plains, their metal limbs crushing everything in their path. Cities fell under firestorms of energy, and the screams of civilians echoed through the ruins. Coalition soldiers fought valiantly, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with sticks. Each step forward was paid for in lives, and hope began to crumble. Then, the humans moved. It started with small squads, moving through the smoke and debris, their armor scratched and dark, their weapons gleaming in the red light of fires. They did not hesitate. They did not panic. They did not question orders. They moved as a single terrifying organism, each soldier anticipating the enemy before it even struck. The first Ketheri units to encounter them did not run. They fell. The humans did not aim for limbs or weapons. They aimed for the kill. Each strike was precise, brutal, and final. Within minutes, entire squads of the enemy were reduced to silence. The ground littered with the remnants of machines and the shattered bodies of those who had dared to fight them. Coalition soldiers watched in disbelief. They had trained for this war, studied tactics, and faced danger before. But nothing had prepared them for the Terrans. One young Kalari lieutenant fell to his knees, whispering, "They do not fight like us. They fight like death itself." The Terrans advanced relentlessly. They moved through the ruined streets of cities that once stood proud, hunting down Cathari infiltrators and machine patrols with terrifying efficiency. Explosions erupted, metal screamed, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning circuits and scorched flesh. Not a single human faltered. Not a single one hesitated. By the time the coalition forces regrouped, the battlefield was nearly clear. The Cathari had no survivors. Entire attack waves had been cut down before they could reach the city walls. The humans stood amidst the wreckage, calm, breathing heavily but showing no sign of relief or triumph. General Thalos walked among them cautiously. He saw the empty, hard look in their eyes and felt a chill run down his spine. "Who are you?" he asked one of the soldiers, his voice trembling. The human did not smile. "We are Earth's children," he said simply. "We are what your enemies should have feared from the beginning. We do not fight wars. We end them." Silence fell over Thalos. He had commanded thousands, fought in countless battles, yet he had never felt so small, so insignificant. These humans had not come to help. They had come to exterminate. As the last of the Cathari forces were wiped out, a strange hush fell over the battlefield. The only sound was the wind through ruined buildings and the distant crackle of fires. No cheering. No victory cries. Just humans standing silent, watching, waiting. The coalition soldiers approached slowly, unsure how to respond. They were grateful, yes, but also afraid. They had called for saviors, for soldiers to defend them. Instead, they had been given executioners. And somewhere deep inside, Thalos realized that the war was far from over. The humans had won this battle, but the shadow of their presence stretched long. Where they went, death followed. And soon, the galaxy would learn what it truly meant to have Earth's warriors arrive. The first battle was over, but a new era of terror and hope had just begun. Part 4. Whispers of Fear. The news of Vera's liberation spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Worlds that had watched their neighbors fall to the Cathari now looked to the humans with awe and a touch of fear. Some hailed them as saviors, angels of death sent from the stars to protect the innocent. Others whispered in secret corners, calling them monsters in human skin, beings who walked through fire and left only silence behind. On the planets that had survived the Cathari's advance, people crowded the streets to witness the Terrans. Children stared with wide eyes, captivated by the humans' sharp movements and silent determination. Civilians whispered stories of battles where no Cathari had survived, where not even a machine's limb remained intact. It was almost impossible to believe. Yet behind every cheer there was unease. Survivors remembered the faces of those they had called enemies, and they remembered how the humans had ended them, quickly, efficiently, without hesitation. The Terrans did not fight for glory, for medals, or even for recognition. They fought for the kill, and they never stopped until it was done. Coalition leaders convened in secret chambers to discuss the humans' role. Heated debates filled the air, voices raised, scales of logic and emotion tipping back and forth. "Have we traded one tyrant for another? One counsel me?" Ember asked, her voice trembling. "They do not just defeat the enemy, they erase them. Where does it end?" "No," said another, calmer but firm. "We asked for soldiers. We asked for help. They gave us victory. They do not conquer. They do not occupy. They do not enslave. They destroy threats, then leave. They are different. Hard, yes. Merciless, yes. But they are not like the Cathari. They fight for life, not domination." Outside the council chambers, Terrans moved among the survivors with silent efficiency. They helped the wounded, repaired buildings, and secured critical infrastructure, but always with the same intense calm that had marked their battles. They spoke little, smiled less, and their eyes seemed to measure everything with the cold precision of predators. In quiet moments, coalition soldiers would gather and share stories. Some spoke with reverence of the human skill, the speed and precision of their attacks. Others spoke with unease, describing the way the humans seemed to anticipate every move of the Cathari, the way their weapons struck with finality, leaving no chance for mercy or surrender. Even those who had fought alongside the Terrans began to feel a strange tension. They admired their allies, but they also feared them. The humans were necessary, undeniably. Without them, the Cathari would have consumed every world. Yet there was something about the way they fought, The way they moved and the emptiness in their eyes that made the coalition question whether they could ever truly understand these executioners. On Vera, General Thalos walked through the streets of his city, now quiet after the battle. The ruins of the Ketheri machines lay scattered like fallen giants, and the scent of burned metal hung heavy in the air. He watched Terrans moving silently through the debris, picking up stray weapons, scanning the sky for threats that no longer existed. A young Terran soldier approached him, kneeling beside a collapsed building and examining a broken Kethari war machine. "It is done," the soldier said softly, almost to himself. "They will not rise again here." Thalos nodded, but he could not shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at him. The humans had given them victory, yes, but in doing so, they had reminded him of something essential. War had become personal for them. Earth had faced monsters of its own, and humanity had survived not by kindness, but by learning how to become harder, stronger, and more terrifying than anything it had ever faced. As the sun set over Vera, casting long shadows across the ruined battlefield, whispers of fear and awe spread through every coalition world. Tales of Earth's executioners would grow into legend, and somewhere in the galaxy leaders would ponder a simple truth. When humanity arrived, they brought salvation, and they brought terror in equal measure. The Terrans did not celebrate. They did not boast. They simply waited for the next call, the next world in need, their eyes always scanning the horizon, ready to strike again. And across the stars, the galaxy began to understand that these were not mere soldiers. They were executioners, and when Earth sent them, nothing would ever be the same again. Part 5. The Breaking Point. The war stretched on, longer than anyone had dared to imagine. The Kethari had rebuilt, adapted, and attacked again, their machines more cunning and relentless with every strike. Coalition fleets were exhausted. Worlds were burning. Supplies were dwindling. Morale sank into despair. It seemed as though the galaxy itself was on the edge of collapse, and yet the humans never wavered. They moved like shadows of inevitability, striking wherever the Kethari appeared. Entire battalions of the enemy were obliterated before they could fire a single shot. Terran soldiers did not march, they advanced like storms. Their weapons were precise and unyielding. Their strategy was simple: eliminate the enemy completely, leaving no chance to rise again. On one contested world, the Kethari had established a fortified citadel in the mountains. Coalition generals believed it was impregnable. Entire fleets had failed to breach its defenses. Yet the humans arrived with a small strike team. They landed at night, silent and unseen, moving through the icy valleys like hunters. One by one, Ketheri patrols vanished. Traps were disarmed before they could trigger. And when the humans reached the citadel, they unleashed a fury that left the structure in ruins. Not a single Kethari survived to tell the tale. Watching from orbit, coalition soldiers could hardly comprehend what they saw. One veteran whispered, "They are not soldiers. They are something else. They do not fight to win, they fight to end." Even amidst the chaos, the humans showed no cruelty beyond what was necessary. Civilians were spared. Kethari prisoners were few because the humans gave no chance for surrender, and every strike was efficient. But it was this efficiency, this absence of hesitation or mercy, that made them terrifying. In a temporary field hospital, a young coalition medic tended to a wounded Terran soldier, marveling at the calm in the face of pain. "Why do you fight like this?" she asked softly. Her voice was barely audible over the groans of the injured. "Why throw yourself into fire and death so willingly?" The soldier looked up at her, his face streaked with soot and blood. His eyes were tired but focused, a storm behind the calm. "We know monsters," he said quietly. "We have lived among them. We have seen what they can do. We became harder, stronger, crueler than anything else just to survive. Now, we use that cruelty to save you. To save worlds," she nodded, trying to understand. There was no pride in his voice, no boast. Only truth, heavy and painful. Humanity had been forged in fire on their homeworld, and every Terran soldier carried that fire into the stars. Meanwhile, on the battlefront, Ketheri commanders began to whisper of fear. Rumors of the humans' deeds spread through their ranks. Entire squads vanished in moments. Fortresses fell overnight. Nothing survived the Terran strike teams. The machines and their overlords, once confident and unrelenting, now hesitated, trembling before an enemy they could neither predict nor overpower. Even the coalition forces began to feel it, the awe and fear that came with watching humans fight. Soldiers who had once doubted their allies now followed their lead, finding hope in their unshakable resolve. Civilians who had cowered in fear now whispered of legends, Earth's executioners, unstoppable, unyielding, and unafraid. And still, the humans did not rest. They did not celebrate. They did not allow themselves to feel victory. There was always another battle ahead, another world under threat, another Cathari force to confront. They were not heroes. They were executioners, and this war had made that clear to every living being in the galaxy. As the final Cathari strongholds began to crumble, General Thalos watched the Terrans with a mixture of relief and unease. He knew the galaxy owed them everything, yet he could not shake the thought that these humans, these executioners, were something far beyond comprehension. They were not just winning wars. They were teaching the galaxy a lesson about fear, about strength, about the price of survival. The breaking point had come. Not for the humans, they had been ready all along, but for the Cathari, for the coalition, and for the galaxy itself. When the humans fought, nothing remained in the path of their purpose. The Terrans did not just defeat enemies, they erased them. And everyone watching knew that when Earth sent executioners, there would be no mercy. Part 6. The End of the War. At last, the final Cathari fortress, perched on a jagged asteroid orbiting a dying star, burned. The humans had struck without hesitation, their assault swift and absolute. The Cathari machines did not stand a chance. Not one survivor escaped the storm of precision and force that the Terrans brought. Across the galaxy, the news spread instantly. The Cathari threat was gone. Worlds that had trembled under the Dominion shadow now breathed freely. Coalition fleets cheered. Civilians danced in the streets of liberated planets. They called for heroes, for saviors, for those who had brought peace after so long a nightmare. But the humans did not celebrate. They did not stand on stages or accept praise. They had not come to be adored. They had come to do a job, and the job was done. General Thalos stood on Vera, watching the last Terran fleet prepare to depart. He felt a strange mixture of relief, gratitude, and unease. He had expected soldiers, allies who would fight alongside the coalition. Instead, he had witnessed executioners, beings who fought with the skill of masters and the ferocity of predators. He knew the galaxy owed them everything. Yet he also understood that these humans were not like any ally the coalition had known. One of the Terran commanders approached him, armor scorched, face tired, but unbowed. "The threat is finished," he said simply. "Your worlds are safe. That was our task." Thalos nodded. "You have done more than we could imagine. But your methods, your intensity, it is frightening." The human's gaze was steady, calm, and unsettling. "We do not fight like you. We do not fight to win or to impress. We fight to survive, to end threats before they return. We are executioners because the galaxy once needed monsters to face monsters. That is who we are." Thalos swallowed hard. He had commanded thousands in battle, faced horrors he could never forget. Yet he realized that humanity's capacity for both endurance and ruthlessness was on a level he had never seen. They were forged by fire, sharpened by struggle, and now they moved through the stars as something more than ordinary warriors. They were a force no one could ignore. As the Terran fleets departed, civilians and soldiers alike watched in silence. The humans did not wave. They did not leave messages. Their ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving only empty skies and the faintest echo of engines. And in that silence, every observer felt a chilling truth. Earth's executioners had fought the war, and now they were gone, but their presence lingered like a shadow over the galaxy. Even in celebration, whispers spread. "They are our saviors," one citizen said, "but they are also something to fear." Another voice added, "When humans arrive, enemies vanish. But what else will vanish if they return?" Thalos walked through the ruins of Vera, past the burned-out shells of Cathari machines. He saw Terran soldiers quietly tending to survivors, helping repair structures, always calm, always precise. And somewhere inside him he felt a strange, heavy respect. The humans had ended wars, destroyed enemies, and yet carried no arrogance. Their deeds were not for glory. They were for survival, for purpose, and for the quiet knowledge that they had done what was necessary. Finally, he raised his eyes to the stars. The galaxy was safe for now, but it had been a dangerous lesson. When Earth sent its soldiers, wars could be fought. When Earth sent its executioners, enemies ceased to exist and the galaxy would never forget. Part 6, The End of the War. At last, the final Kitari fortress, perched on a jagged asteroid orbiting a dying star, burned. The humans had struck without hesitation, their assault swift and absolute. The Cathari machines did not stand a chance. Not one survivor escaped the storm of precision and force that the Terrans brought. Across the galaxy, the news spread instantly. The Cathari threat was gone. Worlds that had trembled under the Dominion's shadow now breathed freely. Coalition fleets cheered. Civilians danced in the streets of liberated planets. They called for heroes, for saviors, for those who had brought peace after so long a nightmare. But the humans did not celebrate. They did not stand on stages or accept praise. They had not come to be adored. They had come to do a job, and the job was done. General Thalos stood on Vera, watching the last Terran fleet prepare to depart. He felt a strange mixture of relief, gratitude, and unease. He had expected soldiers, allies who would fight alongside the coalition. Instead, he had witnessed executioners, beings who fought with the skill of masters and the ferocity of predators. He knew the galaxy owed them everything, yet he also understood that these humans were not like any ally the coalition had known. One of the Terran commanders approached him, armor scorched, face tired but unbowed. "The threat is finished," he said simply. "Your worlds are safe. That was our task." Thalos nodded. "You have done more than we could imagine. But your methods, your intensity, it is frightening." The human's gaze was steady, calm, and unsettling. "We do not fight like you. We do not fight to win or to impress. We fight to survive, to end threats before they return. We are executioners because the galaxy once needed monsters to face monsters. That is who we are." Thalos swallowed hard. He had commanded thousands in battle, faced horrors he could never forget. Yet he realized that humanity's capacity for both endurance and ruthlessness was on a level he had never seen. They were forged by fire, sharpened by struggle, and now they moved through the stars as something more than ordinary warriors. They were a force no one could ignore. As the Terran fleets departed, civilians and soldiers alike watched in silence. The humans did not wave. They did not leave messages. Their ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving only empty skies and the faintest echo of engines. And in that silence, every observer felt a chilling truth. Earth's executioners had fought the war, and now they were gone, but their presence lingered like a shadow over the galaxy. Even in celebration, whispers spread. "They are our saviors," one citizen said, "but they are also something to fear." Another voice added, "When humans arrive, enemies vanish. But what else will vanish if they return?" Thalos walked through the ruins of Vera, past the burned-out shells of Cathari machines. He saw Terran soldiers quietly tending to survivors, helping repair structures, always calm, always precise. And somewhere inside him he felt a strange, heavy respect. The humans had ended wars, destroyed enemies, and yet carried no arrogance. Their deeds were not for glory. They were for survival, for purpose, and for the quiet knowledge that they had done what was necessary. Finally, he raised his eyes to the stars. The galaxy was safe for now, but it had been a dangerous lesson. When Earth sent its soldiers, wars could be fought. When Earth sent its executioners, enemies ceased to exist, and the galaxy would never forget. Part 2. First Contact with Terror. The fortress world of Vera had always been a proud stronghold of the Coalition. Its towering defense walls, its shining fleet, and its garrisons had stood as a symbol of safety for centuries. Now, after months of defeat at the hands of the Cathari, it had become something else, a meeting place of desperation. It was here the Coalition generals gathered to welcome their new allies from Earth. They expected soldiers. They expected warriors in neat uniforms, saluting with practiced discipline, their voices filled with vows of loyalty. Some even hoped for kindness, for reassurance that help had truly arrived. But when the humans came, the sky itself darkened. The first Terran fleet emerged from hyperspace, their ships black and gray like knives cutting through the void. They did not move in elegant formations like Coalition cruisers. They moved like hunters, silent and deliberate, each vessel designed for one purpose: war. Their engines burned with a cold white light that painted the heavens in fire. The civilians on Vera ran into the streets, pointing to the sky. Some cheered. Some trembled. The coalition officers stood on the landing platforms, their eyes wide as the Terran ships descended. When the ramps lowered, the first Terran soldiers marched out. They were not like the coalition imagined. Their armor was not bright and ceremonial. It was scarred, dented, and painted in dull shades of gray and black. Each mark told a story of battles survived. Their helmets bore no crests of honor, no golden symbols of pride. Only practical gear worn by those who expected to fight and kill again. Their eyes were worse, cold, sharp, unblinking. These were not eyes of hopeful recruits. They were the eyes of predators. General Thalos of Vera, a proud commander with scales like polished stone, stepped forward to greet them. He tried to hold his ground, but when he looked into the eyes of the Terran officer leading them, something inside him faltered. That human gaze was not cruel. It was not wild. It was worse. It was empty of everything except purpose. The officer's voice was calm, low, and steady as stone. "We heard your call," he said. "You asked for soldiers. What you need are executioners. That is what we are." The words sank into the silence like a blade into flesh. The coalition officers exchanged nervous glances. They had asked for protectors, defenders who would hold the line against the Cathari. But what had arrived on their soil were killers, walking in human skin. Whispers filled the chamber later that night. Some officers called the humans saviors. Others muttered that they had invited demons into their midst. General Thalos sat alone, staring at his hands. He had commanded thousands in battle, but never before had he felt so small. He remembered the Terran officer's eyes and shivered. For the first time since the war began, he wondered not only if the coalition could survive the Cathari, but if it could survive the help it had just received.